What's up, everybody? It's Coach Kev. Is the Women's NCAA Tournament more interesting than the Men's NCAA Tournament? I can't believe we've got to this point in society where we can even have this debate. This is not only good for the game of basketball, but this is great for the game of basketball. Here's Stephen A. Smith's thoughts on this topic. Let's listen to him and let's discuss our points of view.
I have to confess, the women are far more interesting. There's two stories that resonate more than anything, and we need to get over it because it's the absolute positive truth. Is Caitlin Clark going to win the national championship and cement her legacy as one of the greatest female college basketball players ever? I think she already has. Please don't get me wrong. But when you want to compare her or eclipse her over a Cheryl Miller, a Diana Taurasi, or Breanna Stewart, the list goes on and on. You got to get a championship.
So, great point to start off by Stephen A. Smith. Caitlin Clark, I coach girls, so I say we as coaches, but the ones that watch women's basketball, they now have stars. And I'm not saying they didn't have stars in the past, but right now they have stars all at the same time, playing at the same time. When you talk about Caitlin Clark, Paige Buckets, you talk about Juju Watkins, you talk about the dynasty that is South Carolina and that tough squad over there. Women's basketball is in a great place, and the skill level and the stars are standing out, and they are showing out in this tournament.
And Breanna Stewart won all 4 years. Diana Taurasi had 3 titles. Cheryl Miller had 2. You got to get one. Despite the fact you're leading the nation in points and assists, averaging over 32 a game, you still need one title, just one. So watching whether or not Caitlin Clark is going to do it, that's one storyline. You know what the other storyline is? Would they beat LSU in a rematch if they faced one another? Because that's possible. Would they beat LSU, led by Angel Reese and the crew? Would that happen? That's another possibility. And then here's the biggest possibility. I think this is the biggest story in women's college basketball, bigger than Caitlin Clark.
So LSU versus Iowa. That is what needs to happen. The rematch for women's college basketball. That will break numbers for viewers, and that will be must-see TV. We have to see that. It has to happen. I don't know how we make this happen, but Iowa, you got to win. LSU, you got to win, and y'all got to match up in this tournament. We got to see this rematch.
LSU versus South Carolina. LSU versus South Carolina. Dawn Staley. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to talk about the greatness. What about Pat Summitt, the late, great Pat Summitt, God rest her soul, Gino Auriemma and what he's done? Kim Mulkey and what she's doing at LSU, what she used to do at Baylor. She won 3 titles at Baylor, won 1 at LSU last year. Dawn Staley is undefeated in back-to-back seasons. Dawn Staley is like 68-1 over the last 2 years. Dawn Staley is like 105-3 over the last 3 years. I mean, damn. And you saw how South Carolina and LSU got into it. Ladies and
Yo, Stephen A. Smith is crazy. What was that? Somebody's phone went off? Yo, he's crazy. But like he says, a great point. Not only do they have stars in the game of basketball when it comes to the women's game, but they have great coaches. And you just named some: Gino, Dawn Staley, Coach Mulkey. This list goes on. So you got the great coaches matched up with the stars, creating great basketball. It becomes must-watch TV, and the viewership just is going to continue to go up.
Gentlemen, that sound right there is supposed to be a leading producer for the podcast that doesn't know how to make sure his equipment is turned off before we go to taping. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. He's got this experience, but somehow he just embarrassed himself like that. I mean, can you believe it? But anyway, I digress. The point is, South Carolina, LSU, SEC Conference, reigning defending national champions, LSU, best team in basketball, South Carolina, led by Dawn Staley. That, to me, is more compelling than the men's game. And the women's game, let me say this because it needs to be said. The women's game has really elevated itself. And I think it's time for the rest of us all to take notice. These women, what's the reason for it? It could be Title IX. I mean, it could be names like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Juju Watkins out of USC, who's a bad sister, Cameron Brink. I mean, it could be a host of all of this stuff. But Title IX, 1972, remember that. Because you're talking about how the act mandated equitable treatment of girls and women in educational institutions that receive federal funds. And so all of a sudden, you got into a situation where what are we talking about here? We're talking about equipment. We're talking about notoriety. We're talking about all of these different things. They have it now. And the women's game, dare I say, is more marketable and is competitive ratings-wise with the men in college basketball.
So that's another great point. So the rivalries, like I said in my previous video about this, rivalries is what makes us watch sports. I'm not saying to end all be all, but that's a big part of, we want to see if this team can beat the top team. The team from out of nowhere can compete with the best of the best. If one team beats one team last year, can they come back and avenge that loss and beat them the next year? We want to see stuff like that. And that's what the women's game is building and has built. So we want to see these matchups. Like Stephen A. Smith said, LSU via South Carolina would be another beautiful, beautiful matchup that we would want to see if LSU can dethrone the queens of women's basketball.
Keep your eyes on this, ladies and gentlemen. There's a dramatic shift that is taking place, and we can't ignore it.
My thoughts on this. Just like how the men's game has advanced and gotten better over the years, I feel like the women's game has done the same. Not only, dare I say, have they gotten more athletic, they have definitely become more skilled. Everything has just increased in the game. The players have gotten more skilled, have gotten better, so it's just become easier to watch and a better overall game because of that skill level. I'm not gonna lie, Juju Watkins might be my favorite player. Like, she is tough. She reminds me of Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse when he won the chip. Like, her game is so smooth. She can pretty much do everything on the court. Like, people who say they don't watch the women's game, I can't watch women, they don't really watch players like that. Because if they watch players like Caitlin Clark, Juju Watkins, Paige, like I said, these players, they would be like, yo, they're tough. This is high-level basketball, and they are tough. I agree 100% with Stephen A. Smith that the women's side is more compelling, it's more interesting, it's starting to be more talked about than the men's side, and I'm all here for it. I love to see it. I hope the women's game continues to strive forward and become better and just continue to reach the horizons that it's meant to reach. So what are your thoughts in the comments below? Are you watching the NCAA tournament? Are you watching the men's and or the women's side? Do you feel like the women's side is more compelling, more interesting than the men's side? What are your thoughts on college basketball in general? What are your thoughts on what Stephen A. Smith and what I had to say about the women's side being more interesting than the men's side? Leave all your comments in the comments. All your comments in the comments below. All your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, this is Coach Kev, and I'm out of here. Peace.